Welcome, critters! I am Claire Jones, your devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we discuss and examine Critical Role episodes, players, plot lines, and characters through the lens of sacred reading practices. And this particular episode is about Campaign 1, Episode 11, Part 2. And joining me today again is Petall. So nice to see you.
Hello, nice to be back.
So the icebreaker question for today that I found, which I'm really interested to see your answer on or hear your answer on, is would you rather live in the ocean or on the moon?
That's interesting. I think I'd have to say in the ocean though, because I remember the ocean has jellyfish and I'm scared of jellyfish.
Well, I think you can pick the ocean.
I'm pretty sure all oceans have jellyfish in some capacity. Anyways, still gonna go with the ocean just because I remember being a kid and wishing I could like breathe underwater.
Yeah, totally. I was gonna go with the ocean as well, just because I feel like I would have more company there. Like I don't want to be completely alone on the moon by myself. Like I think my question would change, or my answer would change if there were other people on the moon with me.
Exactly. Is it like a moon colony situation, or are you stranded on the moon on your own for eternity?
Yeah, like I'm totally okay with making friends with like the pufferfish and the starfish and all that jazz. But if I'm on the moon completely by myself, like that's gonna drive me crazy.
Same.
All right, so please join us as we embark on this exciting adventure in story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. And as always, we love hearing your own insights and stories as well. So please comment, like, subscribe, and share. And ready? All right, let's dive in. So, Vox Machina have just settled in to discuss their next steps and rest for the night, taking turns to keep an eye out since they are on an island in the middle of an underground lake that is home to a city of mind players who are currently under the control of Kavarn, an evil beholder wielding the horn of Orcus. They wake up and Grog offers his cask of ale to the giant that they had charmed into helping them defeat Kavarn, and the giant proceeds to drink the entire cask and then smash it in his fist. Grog is very sad and tries to restrain himself from raging and seeking his vengeance against the giant while the rest of the group attempts to distract him. He then decides to headbutt the giant, as one does, and rolls a natural 20, knocking the giant onto his back, stunned. He then sternly tells the giant that he owes him a cask of ale before going to sulk and grieve in the corner while Pike consoles him. Tiberius uses his mending wheel to repair the broken cask, and they all reassure him that they will be able to refill it. Pike also heals Vax's lava-melted foot some more, but not entirely. Keyleth casts Enhanceability on Scanlan to give him advantage on dexterity rolls so that he can go with Vax on the magic carpet to do some stealth recon. They circle around the city a bit and see many different figures walking in the streets, including mind flayers, ogres, trolls, and other beings. They see some mind flayers walking to and from the central temple as well, which is where Kavarn is. They return to the group and discuss a lot. This is a lot of discussion in this I was like, do I have to write each discussion point? And I was like, no, I'm not. So they discuss a lot about how to approach the temple, but they eventually decide on polymorphing their giant into a mouse and dropping him from above onto the metal contraption that is controlling the mind flayer's elder brain at the top of the temple. They ask Kima for her opinion, and she reminds them that a stealth approach is always going to be key. Percy attempts to make an acid arrow in preparation to weaken the metal contraption, but fails and takes a little acid damage in the process. They discuss their plans some more, like even more, ironing out more details, and then they all put their hands together in a group, even Clarota, and cheer Vox Machina before heading out. Scanlan polymorphs the giant into a mouse. Tiberius casts Fly on Grog, and Percy, Vex, Vax, and Scanlan jump onto the flying carpet. They argue briefly about what to do with trinkets, which is the perpetual argument that they have all the time. And they decide to take 2 trips on the carpet to fix that problem. Tiberius will then return and then cast Fly on the trinket once the rest of the party reaches the temple. The first group lands on the top of the temple, and Percy investigates to see where the contraption will be weakest. Tiberius returns the carpet to pick up the second group and casts Fly on Trinket. But unfortunately, Trinket rolls a 1 on his stealth check and alerts a group of bats to their presence. So Keyleth casts Speak with Animals to persuade them to go away, as druids are wont to do. Percy starts pouring acid onto the contraption in the meantime, while Vex ties the giant turned mouse onto one of her arrows, but they never actually use him as an arrow. There's a lot of ideas being thrown around at this point. Tiberius positions his immovable rod above the temple, and Vex ties their unending rope to it to provide one possible exit or entry strategy. Before they move to break the contraption and announce their presence, Vax turns to the group and says, "I have no idea what's about to happen, but it's been a great pleasure to walk beside each and every one of you." To which Percy responds, "Screw you. I want my final words with you to be indignant and irritated." One of Percy's one-liner that lasts the entire campaign.
Mm-hmm.
On the carpet, Tiberius flies the mouse up above the temple while Keyleth casts heat metal on the contraption. Grog rages in preparation. Scanlan casts inspiration on Pike, Grog, Percy, and Vax. Pike also casts Death Ward on Grog and Vax. Tiberius casts Blur on himself, and Keyleth casts Stone Skin on herself. Inside the top temple room, they see that Kavarn is there, standing between two cages where there are stitched together monstrosities, held as well as a well structure that holds the elder brain in the center of the room. Tiberius drops the mouse just as Scanlan unpolymorphs him, and the giant goes slamming into the glass. I believe it kills him in the process, bending the metal contraption, disabling it, and he's now dead on the temple's room floor. Kavarn notices them immediately, and they all roll initiative. Grog goes into the room first, landing on the other side of the elder brain from Kavarn, trying to hide, but not really. Tiberius flies closer with the carpet. Vax throws some daggers with poison from where he is up top. Vex hunters marks Kavarn and shoots an arrow with hail of thorns at him with a little help from Pike's war god blessing. Kavarn flies up closer to the group to aim one eye beam at Percy, who succeeds on a save, a second eye beam at Pike, who fails on her save and is thrown to the floor of the temple room, and a third eye beam at Vax, who also succeeds on a save. Clarota flies down to the temple room directly toward Kavarn in a very brave move to mind blast him, but fails. Percy takes a targeted headshot at one of Kavarn's many eye stalks. Keyleth jumps off the edge of the upper platform and turns into an earth elemental to grapple Kavarn and wrestle him to the floor, somewhat successfully. Pike gets up from being prone on the floor, casts Guiding Bolt at Kavarn, who then uses a legendary action to hit her with another eye beam. She fails on her saving throw and is thrown across the room again against one of the cages. The creature inside reaches its arms through the bars and grapples her to the side of it. Scanlan casts Chain Lightning at Kavarn and both cage creatures using a scroll. Kima uses the rope to land inside the temple room and casts Aura of Vitality on herself. Grog runs over to Kavarn in a frenzied rage and swings up at him with his great axe. And Tiberius flies the magic carpet over closer to the city below them, away from the fight. Vax uses the rope to swing toward Kavarn and stab him 3 times with his daggers, but Kavarn uses another legendary action to hit him with an eye beam. Vax shoots another arrow with Hail of Thorns at Kavarn, and then he takes his turn by aiming one eye beam at Percy, who succeeds, a second eye beam at Grog, who fails and takes damage, and a third eye beam at Scanlan, who succeeds. Kavarn then pushes Earth Elemental Keyleth off of him and flies up closer to the top of the room, but they now notice that his wounds are actually slowly healing themselves, which is not good news. Clarota casts Lightning Bolt at Kavarn, who uses a legendary action to aim the eye beam at Scanlan, who doesn't succeed on a saving throw and is pulled to the floor of the temple room. Percy shoots Bad News at Kavarn. Earth Elemental Keyleth holds her turn to lift and throw Grog at Kavarn, like a cheerleader attempt. And Pike attempts to break the grapple holding her against the cage. And I wrote that she fails, but she ends up being freed at some point. So I missed where she freed the grapple, but it happens at some point. And then she casts Mass Cure Wounds on herself, Grog, Scanlan, and Keyleth. Scanlan gets up from prone, casts Bigsby's hand to punch Kavarn in the face, then casts Healing Word on Grog. Kima casts Sacred Weapon on her maul, and on Grog's turn, Earth Elemental Keyleth tosses Grog up, who grasps onto the horn of Orcus on top of the beholder. Grog then tries to rip the horn off, but fails. Kavarn uses one of his legendary actions to aim an I-beam at Grog, who succeeds on his throw. Tiberius sees a swarm of mind flayers heading towards the temple in the city, so he flies down and casts Alter Self on himself to turn him into Clarota for some reason, and calls out to them, trying to persuade them to join him on the magic carpet to fight Kavarn. They more or less ignore him and continue heading towards the temple. Vax throws some daggers at Kavarn, who then spends another legendary action to aim an I-beam at him, but he succeeds on a saving throw. Vex shoots an ensnare arrow and a flaming arrow at Kavarn, who then uses his turn to shake Grog off of him. Kavarn then aims one I-beam at Vex, who succeeds, an I-beam at Grog, who fails, and a third I-beam at Grog again, because he's really pissed at Grog, who fails and takes damage again. So Grog falls unconscious, but fortunately, the Death Ward that Pike has cast brings him back to 1 hit point. Kavarn, incensed by this resilience that he's seeing, uses a legendary action to aim another I-beam at Grog, who also finally succeeds on his saving throw. Clarota casts Lightning Bolt at Kavarn again. Kavarn uses another legendary action to aim an I-beam at Grog again. He's after him, who fails his saving throw and falls dead, because I think it's a necrotic touch, I think is the one. And when you fall to 0, you're dead, not just unconscious. You're like dead. So Percy shoots at the metal contraption that is broken and hanging to force it to swing toward Kavarn and slam into him. Percy also uses his action surge to shoot at Kavarn directly. Pike runs over to Grog to revivify him successfully and also gives him a superior healing potion. Kavarn also uses a legendary action to aim an I-beam at Pike for healing Grog, but she succeeds on her throw. Scanlan tries to cast Blindness on Kavarn unsuccessfully and then gives Grog a little more healing. Kima asks Earth Elemental Keyleth to toss her up to Kavarn like she did with Grog, and Kima arcs through the air, landing with her maul on top of him to cast Divine Smite into the hit. She falls to the other side of him, landing prone. Grog throws his axe at Kavarn using the Chain of Returning, but it misses with a natural 1, and the chain breaks off of his axe once it enters Kavarn's anti-magic cone. Tiberius flies back to the top of the temple and casts telekinesis to rip the horn off of Kavarn unsuccessfully, so he uses sorcery points to cast telekinesis again to rip one of his eye stalks off. Vax throws daggers again, then Vex shoots an arrow with Hail of Thorns as well as regular arrow and successfully kills Kavarn. But unfortunately, he heals on his turn thanks to the Horn of Orcus and resurrects as an undead beholder. Everyone's favorite version of beholder.
Oh yeah,
Beholder.
The beholder isn't enough already.
Right. So Kavarn, in his new undead form, aims an I-beam at Kima, who fails on her saving throw and starts to turn to stone. A second I-beam at Vax, who succeeds on his throw, and a third I-beam at Pike, who fails on her throw and takes some damage. Clarota attempts to wrap Kavarn with his tentacles, damaging him a bit, while Percy shoots at the horn unsuccessfully. Pike casts Divine Intervention, but it does not succeed, so she drinks a quick healing potion for herself. Scanlan casts Lightning Bolt at Kavarn and then gives some healing to Pike as well. Kima stands up from prone, but she turns to solid stone. Earth Elemental Keyleth runs over to grapple Kavarn, and Grog attacks him with a great sword of frenzy, but unfortunately gets grappled by one of the caged monsters. Tiberius casts Glacial Blast at Kavarn and kills him for a second time. But they notice that there is black energy still being drawn in by the horn, so Tiberius uses some more sorcery points to cast telekinesis again, successfully ripping the horn off of Kavarn. Tiberius also then uses telekinesis to smash the horn into Kavarn's dead body a couple times for good measure. Bragging. And that's when the Elder Brain starts to glow brighter, and that's where they end for the episode. So Second half. Let's hear it.
Gosh, so much was going on. And we gotta talk about
Yeah.
Tiberius.
Yeah. We can't avoid it. There's
We
like,
can't avoid it. This
there's,
is like the half of the episode of Tiberius.
mhm.
I have been dreading this day, but also looking forward to actually talking about it.
It's not just
Since
one
I,
elephant in the room, there's 10 elephants in the room.
yeah. It's just like I said last episode, like this is when it sort of really begins to show more obviously
Yeah.
how he is not meshing with the party and how things are
Yeah.
clashing.
Yeah. I honestly thought that it was super interesting that it was primarily Marisha and Laura who were stepping up against his, what I called assholery.
Oh yeah.
My notes. And I thought that was really particularly interesting because I think Sam has tried to confront some of these behaviors in the past episodes, but
Yeah.
he's never gotten a constructive response from Orion in the
Yeah.
process of it. And I kept laughing because I kept pausing to write down a bunch of quotes from this, especially the quotes of them arguing back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I paused it, the faces on everyone's on the freeze screen when he would say stuff was just like cracking me up because they were all like all of them were like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah. He was just like not a good sport in any of the fight. He was trying to avoid like staying out of like damage zone so that other people could take the hits instead. There's the bragging at the end of like cause he got the final blow on Kavarn, which I don't think he deserved at all.
Yeah.
There's just so much, just like not everyone else was like really doing their best to like work together as a team. There was like tossing people around to get them closer to Gavarn. There was all sorts of this really, really good teamwork happening. And then there was Tiberius, who was off doing his own thing and trying to either be the hero or not get hit.
And he just made some really unfortunate comments throughout the entire episode. Like, so it's one thing to role play as your character, but I feel like Orion had a lot of side commentary going on throughout this episode. Like even before any of the fighting started, said, if I'm dead, none of you will survive.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Now that you mention it, gosh, I hated it when he said that.
Yeah.
It's just like you're like not really that important to the party, but like the only person who can hold that weight and maybe say that like comment with any truth is like a character like Pike. Because Pike is their healer.
Totally.
I think Pike is basically the only person at this point that they like would probably be dead without.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was only for his teleportation spell. He was basically like, you'll all die without my teleportation spell and something. And he also made a rim job joke when the Scanlan and Vax were circling around the city, and like no one caught it except for Marisha. And she was like, what did you just say?
Yeah.
Some other quotes that I wrote down was Tiberius getting mad in the middle of the fight. Everyone was talking about how badly it was going, and he was like, are you surprised? And Keyleth, I think it was more Marisha saying this, was like, well, stop being so pouty. You knew this was coming.
Yeah.
And Laura / Vex is just said, stop being a dick. And that's when Tiberius goes, I'm angry at all of you right now. And then at the end, when he does try to rip off the horn of Orcus, like Marisha tries to rip it off because she's right next to Kavarn, and Tiberius goes like, no, it's my, or Orion goes, no, it's my turn, I want to do it. And Marisha's like, okay, gee.
That's like the same way that like the children at my work
Yeah,
like the literal
right.
elementary schoolers who have not yet learned social norms nor have the capacity to like control their reactions yet because
Totally.
they are literal children. And here is Orion, a full-grown adult who should be fully capable of, at the very least, pulling himself together for a live stream that is
Right.
being streamed to what is like already a swiftly growing fan base. And
Mm-hmm.
he's still there, like just acting like Tiberius is the most important.
Yeah.
And that like it's all the Tiberius show,
Yeah.
and rather than like what everybody else is really good at doing is letting other people have like their moments for their characters, like their
Mm-hmm.
moments of victory, their moments for like plot and everything, and like their moments for like their character's emotional process.
Mm.
Like Tiberius is just always, Orion is always like centered on Tiberius. He's not thinking
Yeah.
about how to like lift other members of the party up for their
Yeah.
moments. He's always trying to steal the spotlight.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of discourse over the years about like how that's just Tiberius, you know, and so Orion's just playing like Tiberius's selfishness, you know, like it's all role play on Orion's part. There's been a lot of arguments to that effect over the years. And that begs the question of, is your player suited to the party as a player? Like
Mm-hmm.
not only you as the player, but like you as the character, are you suited to that party? Like, is Tiberius a good D&D character?
Yeah, because that's another question. Like, I know that there's all these debates about like whether metagaming is okay or not, but like you have to, in order to be a good team player, you have to allow some level of metagaming, if only to like give your characters a reason to be like decent party members to everybody else.
Totally.
Like, make it like you have to make sure that you're meshing with everyone else. Part of D&D and playing in D&D is making sure that you are having fun in a way that doesn't interfere with anybody else's ability to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like that can be like a difficult line to balance. Sometimes I'm playing a character right now. I won't give too many characters at the detail in case anybody in the party is going to listen to this episode, but like I've got a character who is secretly evil and is
Mm,
working against the goals of the party. But what I've been very, very careful to do while I've been playing them is to make sure that none of my acts of betrayal like have anything to do that like would harm the
mm,
party or the ability to have fun unless until it's that big
mm.
reveal moment where I'm
Yeah.
backstabbing them, and that's like the thing, like because I don't want, I'm having a lot of fun with this character, but I don't want to mess with my party's ability to have fun by like refusing to like get along with everybody.
Yeah.
Like there was one time we were in a combat against my character's actual allies, and
Mm,
I that was actually really fun because I had to try to find a way to stay true to my character's goals of like not hurting my character's real allies, but
yeah.
also not like dooming everybody in the fight. So what I
Yeah.
decided to focus on instead was having my character try to get my real allies out of the room so that they would have
Mhm.
less people to fight. And it would still be helping my party member, but I wouldn't be hurting my real allies. And
Totally.
like that was just something that I really, really wanted to be aware of, was like I
Mhm.
don't want to be the reason in this fight that another character dies,
You're right.
because that this isn't the time for the reveal. They wouldn't know. It'd be frustrating if I was just standing there not
Mhm.
actually helping. I needed to find a way to both stay true to my character
Mhm.
and make sure the game was still fun for
Mhm.
everybody else.
Yeah.
And so like I think it can be fun to be playing like complex characters that have like
Sure.
complex relationships to the party, or like a complexity in their ability to be like selfless or selfish. But what you have to, if you're going to play a character like that, then you need to be real good at metagaming in a way that you are not ruining the fun for everyone else. And that is not a skill that Orion has. Tiberius would be a great character if he was played by somebody who could play him and his selfishness and all of that in a way that did not clash, like with like it's like clash with the rest of the party so much. Like we've seen in other campaigns, there have been lots of like good character conflict moments, like Caleb and Bo and all of these things. But the thing that makes that different than this is the fact that they were playing those conflicts in a way where it wasn't bleeding over into the actual players.
Yeah.
Both sides knew they were playing a game. Both sides were comfortable with it. They weren't like sabotaging each other's ability to actually play the game well or like succeed or celebrate, have these moments celebrating their characters, whereas Tiberius just like swoops in.
Yeah.
And like steals the victory.
Yeah.
Steals the moment, does the minimum he possibly can.
Right. And then rubs it in everyone's faces.
And then rubs it in everyone's faces like he's done the most amazing thing ever by even like deigning to help them.
Right. Yeah. Like one of the last line that I wrote down was, I just killed it. Don't tell me what to do, y'all. Like that last one liner, when I paused to write that down, everyone's faces was just like shocked. Like,
yeah.
I was like, did you really just like, even Matt's face was like,
yeah.
Okay. Like, you're really going to do that. And I think what we're talking about here is player intention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, even when you were talking earlier about emotional regulation, you have to have distance in order to create that intention with your emotions. Like, there's the knee-jerk emotional reaction, but then there's the thoughtful response emotional reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially when you're role-playing characters in something like D&D, like there has to be a lot of space between those two things because you're considering lots of different possibilities. It's like, all right, what's my reaction versus what would be my character's reaction? And is that character reaction going to be helpful in this scenario? You know, and so would that be something my character suppresses or decides to go through with? You know, there's a lot of questions you have to ask yourself before you actually make the behavior in the game.
Absolutely. Like, it really can't be that knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
Like, I think what the rest of the cast are really good at doing are like embodying their characters to a degree that the first reaction that they have are genuinely how their character would react.
Yeah.
Because they're not thinking in the way of their brain. They're so ingrained in their characters.
Totally.
Their thought patterns are their characters' thought patterns. Like, you can see it in like how they hold themselves as they carry different characters and all of these things. And like just those like moments in between where they aren't actually saying anything of their characters, like they're totally in character entirely. It's like they're gone.
Yeah.
Their character is what's there. But with like Orion, there isn't really that.
Yeah.
There's none of that like divide between him and Tiberius. For him, it's not stepping into Tiberius. It's more of like Tiberius doesn't have like that same amount of depth to the way that he's portrayed. He's just basically like Orion's like persona more than he is a like actually designed character.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's a lot to say on this, but is there anything you want to add before we move on to personal experiences that are thoughts and minds?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think if I don't stop talking about this now, I'm gonna keep
I was like, I have so many more notes, but like we're already at 29 minutes. So I was like, all right, let's move on to personal experiences. And in terms of personal experiences, what I think of most is mansplaining and like having people mansplain things to me over the course of my life. Like that's what I feel like when Orion and Tiberius are in the picture. Like I don't need you to like act like you know best in this scenario.
Yeah.
That's one of the notes that I made, is like Orion's know-it-all approach versus Grog's strategy approach,
Yeah.
because they're very similar in the sense of like they're guiding the group in a direction that they think is the right direction. Like Grog, or
Mm-hmm.
rather Travis, multiple times goes like, yeah, but can we talk about this just a little bit further, because I think that this is going to be a problem. Whereas Orion's like, no, I'm right, do what I say. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to be pissy and pouty and mad about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And for like my personal experience, it just reminds me of a like friendship that I once had that really went south. And I was really close friends with this person, but it kind of, I didn't realize it until afterwards in retrospect, but like everything that was going on was always about her.
Mm.
And she was always able to set boundaries with me, which of course I respected. But anytime I tried to set boundaries with her, she would cross them or like put a whole bunch of pressure on me to change them, like saying that they were like stupid boundaries or that she should be able to do this or that she didn't mean it in that way, so it's fine.
Yeah,
And like all of these things, and it just kind of like seems like kind of what we've been talking about like so it's important in like a friendship, not just in D&D, to be
totally,
able to give other people their moments.
totally.
It can't be all about you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
like that was just something that was really missing in that friendship. There were moments that like she would like give, but it like give me more like attention and focus rather than it being the other way around. But it was always like followed up with like, oh, look what a good friend I am.
Yes.
Or like it always had to have some purpose for her. Or, oh, she was helping me because she knew what was best for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was how she was stepping in to help me. And like, now we're going to focus on your problems
Mm-hmm.
because I can see that these are problems. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like, oh, I see you're struggling, talk to me. Like, let's sort this out. It would be like, oh, like you're having this problem, so you need to do this, 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 and this. She basically
Mm-hmm.
tried to be like a life coach to me instead of a friend, tried to be like the one to like
Unsolicited advice.
sort out my life and like tell me. She's like, oh, like you need to like get outside more and that's why you're so depressed. Never mind the fact that she knows full well from her own experience that like depression does not work like that. She had some pretty serious depression,
Yeah, yeah,
and if anybody told her that, like she would have been ranting to me for ages, and yet
yeah,
here she was saying those things to me and
yeah.
just like showed that total like lack of like ability to see outside of herself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've even dated people who like my fundamental feelings about something were offensive to them.
Oh yeah.
Like I could even say like I feel sad, and they'd be like, how dare you feel sad?
That was exactly what it was like with her. Like if my feelings or my reactions didn't line up with what exactly she was looking for,
Yeah,
it would become a huge problem and it wouldn't just be like, oh, we have different feelings about it. Let's let it be. She's like, no, we need to like unpack all of this
yeah,
and like help like and then like point out to me why all this is wrong because obviously this is wrong and
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
and it was not a good friendship.
yeah. I mean, I think we're circling around the term of narcissism.
Oh yeah.
These
Oh yeah.
conversations, but I'm not a psychologist, so I can't like
Yeah, and
stamp it and be
I do know too that there's a lot of like demonization of like the actual
totally.
condition of narcissism, and that I think sometimes like what is classified as a narcissist is just more should more be classified as like an abuser rather
Mhm.
than
Totally.
adding that further demonization
Yeah, yeah.
to.
But that sense of not caring about
Yeah.
other people beyond you, that's
Yeah,
tracks.
absolutely. I think that that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, how can we approach this without like
Yeah,
hammering people into boxes?
exactly. Exactly. And I just want to
uh
be like that's something that I've just been working on being aware of too, just because I've seen a
Totally.
lot of things on Tumblr about people who like actually do have like narcissistic personality disorder being like, hey, like we aren't all actually like monsters or
Yeah.
abusers or anything like
Yeah.
that. It's more complex than that. And it's just
Totally.
a way that like social media and cultural like has co-opted the term
Totally.
to like to to like make it seem like this,
Hmm.
like it's some like evil dark way that people just are,
Yeah.
rather than it being a way that some people act and think,
Yeah.
but the actual like NPD isn't actually like
Hmm.
necessarily an evil like, or isn't at all an evil thing in and of itself.
Yeah. 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 As much as we can't simplify depression, we also can't simplify narcissism. But
Exactly.
there is a lot of narcissistic tendencies coming up with Orion's and Tiberius's
Hmm.
behavior in these episodes. And those are the personal experiences that I've been thinking of during these episodes.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I know the drama does cool down a little bit after this episode. Like after, well, the
For
next
now.
episode is kind of dramatic, but after the next episode, it kind of calms down because he's around for another like
Yeah.
15 plus episodes.
Yeah,
So
he chills enough to be around for a
totally.
bit longer, but
Hmm.
ultimately,
Yeah.
which we will get to in time. We've got
Yeah.
all those
It's like
episodes
that
in front of
first
us.
fight that like you kind of break up, but you get together afterwards. You're
Yeah.
like, well, we're just gonna make it try one last time.
Yeah.
We'll try again, but you're ultimately breaking up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what this is.
All right, so what are we being called to do?
Yeah, I think just like looking at how the relationships in our life are impacting us and also how we are, because like it's important to like if we're like placing like blame's the wrong word, but also like
Mhm.
looking for these things in other people. It's also
Mhm.
important to take some time to like look within ourselves and see whether we have like any of those unhealthy tendencies within ourselves, because self-reflection is a really big part of like actually being able to like hold like healthy relationships.
Yeah.
And like I think like a lot of these things that we talk about, everybody is guilty of at one point or
Yes.
another. It's
Totally.
whether or not you make it a pattern or whether you learn from those moments. And
Mhm.
so I think ultimately, in addition to, I think, like just like taking a look at the relationships in our lives and making sure that they're healthy and that like are actually like fulfilling, I think it's also important to like look within ourselves and see whether we have any of those traits or tendencies within
Mhm.
ourselves so that we can do our part
Yeah.
in making our relationships with others healthier.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an excellent point because I'm an introvert at the end of the day. And so I have to remind myself to ask questions about other people when I'm in conversations and like make sure that it's a balanced exchange more
Mm-hmm.
so than like me just responding to the other person.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've even been thinking about this lately when it comes to personal relationships versus business relationships.
Oh yeah.
Because in business relationships, I'm very diligent of making sure that I stay in contact with them and that we like, warm contacts and making sure that that relationship is nurtured over time because I realize how important that is for business relationships. But at the same time, I don't necessarily give that same care and attention to my personal relationships
Mm-hmm.
because in my mind, money making business relationships take priority for my attention over personal relationships when really that should be the same level of care
Yeah,
and attention.
yeah.
And so I've actually had to put a few like reminder systems in place to be like I should contact my friends on like a
Mm-hmm.
regular basis instead of just like popping up when I feel like it,
Yeah.
of like putting reminders in my calendar, be like, oh, I should reach out to so and so, or I should reach out to so and so, and just like check in with them instead of because as adults, we can get just so caught up in our own lives
Oh,
and
absolutely.
get
And
so off track.
our society encourages that. Like we
Totally.
live in North America, we live in a society that like encourages like individualism,
Yeah.
and like the capitalist structures in place feed off of that.
Yeah.
And so, not to get all into a new topic, I that's something I could rant
That's
about
another
for ages,
podcast.
and I am not another podcast
Yeah.
episode. I'm sure we can get into it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's like we have to put in that extra effort for
Totally.
that, because the way that our society is currently crafted
Mhm.
like encourages that sort of like focus on yourself and don't care about
Mhm.
anybody else.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I've had to warn several of my personal contacts that like sometimes I just forget that my phone exists. Like
Hmm.
legitimately, I just forget that I have a phone. I just go into full on hermit mode and I'm off in my own
Hmm.
world, talking to trees and having fun. And then like 12 hours later, I realize I have like 5 unanswered texts from people that I just haven't paid attention to. And so it's a matter of balancing that too at
Yeah.
the end of the day. All right. Anything we want to add before we wrap up?
I think we've covered a lot, and I worry that if I start talking, I'm going to go off on another tangent about another topic I'm
Right.
passionate about.
Right.
So I say we end it here for this
Yeah.
episode. I'll be
Yeah.
back in like another few episodes to talk about more stuff.
Yeah. We will get around to capitalism at some point. We will talk more about Tiberius for sure.
Definitely.
All right. Well, these are powerful themes per usual that we're talking about here. And audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts and feelings and stories and insights and failings with us as well, because that's what we're
Hmm.
also talking about is our own flaws and our own shadows that we're seeing mirrored in this media that we're talking about here. And we want to know how Critical Role has impacted you in your own lives. So special thanks to Petall for joining me on this episode. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me yet again.
Mm-hmm. So next time we'll be discussing Campaign 1, Episode 12, Part 1, and Alyssa will be back. So I'm super excited for that. And as always, I'm looking for more co-hosts and guests. So if you're interested in coming on the series, just shoot me an email, shoot me a message. I'll get you the link. And in the meantime, please comment, like, subscribe, follow us on Tumblr at Sacred Reading CR. And until next time, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free, and always, always, always remember to love each other. Take care, guys.